Now. Pramit, hi, so nice to see you, and thank you so much for joining me today. And I want to just set the scene before we go into our conversation. Obviously, your journey is very well known to me and lots of people who've been following you. You're kind of losing your eyesight at a fairly young age, and then your journey since, and what you've created out of, what was quite a life-changing adversity, with your app that we're going to talk about in a little while. But I thought what we would do to begin with is I'd love for you to tell me, um, how did you realize that something so significant was happening to you? And how old were you when you realized that your eyesight was starting to fade?
Okay, so it actually happened all of a sudden. So, in fact, the funny thing is that I was about 30 years old. So, this is like almost 20 plus years back. And I was actually, at that time, I was working with Hindustan Unilever, and I was in marketing, looking at fine artworks and making a lot of presentations, driving also. And I don't know, I mean, I still don't know whether my vision dropped overnight or it kept on dropping so gradually over a period of time that I just didn't realize. But it happened when I was watching a cricket match on TV, and I couldn't see the scores. I had to go near really close. So that's when a cousin who was with me, she got suspicious, and she asked me to look at the time on the watch, on the clock, and I couldn't. So that's when we said something seems to be wrong, and I went to the doctor the next day, and it turned out that my vision dropped drastically, and the doctors were also surprised. How come the vision can drop so much, and you didn't realize? So yes, it came in, as quite a bit of a shock.
And what was the cause of this sudden drop in your vision?
Okay, so this was, this was a medicine which was given to me for joint pains. This was some kind of rheumatism which doctors could not diagnose. And often, when they are not able to diagnose such joint pains, they put you on this medicine. I mean, it's a common medicine. It's called chloroquine, what's given for malaria, and what last year was being talked if you want coronavirus not to hit you. But it can actually have serious side effects, and in some cases just barely 2-3% of the cases, so it can sometimes hit the retina, and in my case that is what it did. It hit the macula, and and like I said, it resulted in actually something called a bullseye syndrome, which led to a significant drop in the vision. So this is something, I would say, a very freakish reaction. And
Hmm.
while my joint pains disappeared, so that's a good part of it, but it left behind the vision problem.
So just on that though, did you were you aware that that was a side effect before you were prescribed this medication?
See, again, one of those funny things they might have told me, because maybe I didn't take it seriously. But I subsequently, nobody told me or nobody warned me that you need combination of, maybe I wasn't told in very serious terms in as many words seriously. Combination of both.
Gosh, 2-3% doesn't sound very low actually. That's quite a high percentage given how commonly that drug is used for malaria and other things. So you realized that this had happened. Did you at any point feel that there was something you could do to reverse it? Was there any chance of reversing that deterioration in your eyesight?
So the only solution to it was that I stopped taking the chloroquine, and I was told that if I'm lucky, it will gradually pass out of the system, and maybe the vision will improve. Worst case scenario, I was told that that's it, vision will not drop any longer. So the both of the things didn't happen. So it didn't improve, neither did it stay there. Over the years, it kept dropping.
And you continue to take chloroquine for your joint pain?
No, I had stopped it at that time. So I took it for maybe something like 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
And mine was a fairly nominal dose. So it was, doctors was surprised that even this kind of a side reaction shouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, that kind of adversity is something you never prepare for, right? I mean, whoever imagines that something like that is going to happen? So how did you face it? What was your response when you realized that this, this was to stay, really?
See, initially, to be honest, like I said, 20 years back, I could still take it because I was getting some correction, and I could wear specs of a certain kind, and I could still read. I could even read the fine print of the newspaper. Though, of course, and I was, by the way, driving also because I had some gross vision. I could manage life in some way. So at that time, 20 years back, it didn't really call for a very, very drastic change. But like I said, as the over the years, my vision kept on dropping, and it will, sometimes drop very fast, then it will remain stable for a few years. So it was all unpredictable. And I think as it gradually kept doing it, and then I hit a point, I think about 9 years back, when there was this phase when vision dropped really fast, and I couldn't read anything at all. Everything got cloudy, foggy, wavy, whichever one way one describes it. And that was the time it hit me, because that was the time when I realized I cannot read anything at all. Suddenly all the confidence was gone, and I was trying to compare my life at that time with what I was doing in the past, and I'll say Excel sheet, PowerPoint, how will I do this, that, and that I think a sort of a fear gripped me in the mind, and that led to what I call like a lost phase, sitting at home for 2.5 3 years, just doing nothing, very low on confidence.
And what was the response from your employer at the time? Because was it starting to spill over into your work? The fact that you were, finding it difficult to read and function maybe as you used to be able to?
Okay, so fortunately, no, because when I was with Unilever, of course, they were very helpful. Now, one of the things I ensured that even as I switched jobs, I moved to Motorola Mobile Store, then I went to Quest Diagnostics. I was very upfront and transparent about where my eye condition is, what my vision is, how much I can see, not see. So, in a way, I think I met employers who were all pretty supportive. Also, it had to do with the kind of role which I had, where it was more about strategy, thinking through in the mind, leading a team. So the vision, I mean, let's say a lack of a certain kind of vision didn't really impact my work. So I was lucky that way. But like I said, the when the problem came or when it hit me, I think more than any extraneous circumstances, it was how I was dealing with it. It was how it was in my own mind. I think that is where the problem was.
Yeah, so talk us through that. How did you deal with it? I mean, you probably went through those 7 stages of grief, that we talk about, the anger, resentment, all the rest of that. How did you cope with that?
No, I didn't go through any of that. Because honestly, I mean, because it had happened, when the thing happened and you asked me, did they warn you and so on, I have never blamed anybody for this,
Mm.
right? I just took it as part of, I mean, this is what life is. So you have your ups and downs, sometimes expected, sometimes unexpected. So I don't think there was any anger, or there was, I was trying to blame anybody, or I was even I didn't look at this as some kind of a misfortune. Let me put it this way. Uh, I wanted to come out of it, but I said the confidence was just lacking. And now, when I sort of diagnose, I think one problem was in my mind was that, like I said, I was living in the past. So in my current that time eye condition, I was trying to see whether I could do the job which I was doing earlier. And of course, earlier I could still see somewhat. Now I couldn't see anything at all. So I think one problem was living in the past. Two, I don't think I was listening to my inner voice. So even though that was the time I was just starting learning meditation, and I was just doing it. So that had helped me sort of keep calm, etc. But it still took me quite some time to actually start listening to my inner voice, start sort of asking myself, okay, what is it that I really would like to do? I think that was the kind of trap I was in.
Mm.
So loss of confidence, not listening to your inner voice. I was in a way also, becoming completely dependent on everybody. I think again, it's all in the mind, right? So you want to be independent, and suddenly, or even somebody calls up, or let's say if I were talking to you now, earlier I would have 100% needed sighted help to help me connect, and then even disconnect, so to say. So I think so the circumstances, yes, were getting sort of tougher. I didn't know how to deal with it. I sort of started withdrawing. So I was not talking to friends and family as openly as I would earlier. So I think it was combination of things which were happening at that time.
Yeah, and there's a number of questions that come from that thing you've just shared with me. But first, I want to ask you in terms of your inner voice and the process of maybe quietening your mind and opening your ears to what your inner voice was saying. Can you share with me what it was saying to you? What were you hearing?
I was actually not trying to hear it, but yeah. So I'll tell you a positive side of it was that as I was meditating and I was going, I was, I just started into spirituality, and like I said, I was not blaming anybody for, I mean, even not even myself. So there was nothing like, oh, why the hell did I take it, or nothing of the sort. So in a way, I was actually calm from inside. So even though I didn't have confidence, even though I was not running anything at that time, and you can imagine, the money was like flowing out like anything, but somewhere deep inside, somewhere I knew that look, this is going to go away. That hope was definitely there, and I think I still kept a positive mindset. So overall, I was still sort of calm, and I wouldn't exactly call it happy, but I mean, I knew this will go away somewhere. That I knew how it will go away. What will I do? Do I have an answer? All that, I think my inner voice would have told me, but I don't think I was listening at that time. I was just
Yeah.
basically what I was doing, just to tell you. So I was actually reaching out to consultants and applying for roles, and then every time some opportunity will come, and I'll suddenly realize, oh, no, 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 I'm not up to it, I won't be able to do it with my vision and so on. So I think I was just playing that game of whatever I had done in the past, just doing more of that, and that was the reason why I was not thinking fresh or listening to my
Yeah.
inner voice.
And actually, earlier you said, when you applied to those different roles, from your original role at Unilever, that you were very upfront and honest, and you told them about the problem with your vision, and it seemed like they were willing to take that on board and welcome you anyway. So, did that confidence to be upfront and say, well, this is where I am, did that change when your vision suddenly became a lot worse, or what happened? Because it felt like you were able to deal with it reasonably well.
Yeah. So, okay. So the difference was I was still upfront and transparent. Earlier, I was, it's your body language and how you tell somebody. So I may say, look, I got this vision problem, but it really doesn't matter. I'll be able to do the job. You guys think about it. Versus, I got this vision problem. I cannot see anything. I'm not sure whether I'll be able to do this or not. And then of course I didn't even feel like saying, okay, would you like to think about it? So that was a difference. That
Yes.
confidence was just not there.
Yeah, yeah. And so how did you overcome that?
Okay. So I think friends and family both helped. And I would say uh, two chance, let's say, encounters, I would call it. One was with the friends, from the same I am Bangalore batch. So they actually, I didn't realize, they called me up over for a beer, and they were meeting me specifically because they were observing. And part of the discussion was, look, you can't keep on living life like this, so it got to change. And one of them asked me in a very, very pointed way that, look, you are living in the past. What is it that you really want to do? And that hit home. And the funny thing was, even over the beer, I could actually tell them what I wanted to do. So that's what I'm saying. So I somehow somewhere knew all along what I wanted to do, but I was not listening to the inner voice. And I mean, there I could say, look, this is what I really want to do. This is the kind of consulting in a very different way. I don't want to take on a full-time role. So it was there. So I think that was one event which shaped it. And another one was I met somebody, and who actually gave me a very interesting point. He said that, look, often in such times, fear grips you, and because life is uncertain, you don't know what's going to happen, and your mind can really start wandering. So he said, why not look at fear in the eye and ask yourself the question, what is it that what is the worst thing that can happen to me? So I try to do that. So I try to actually visualize and make it alive, saying, okay, what is the worst that can happen? if let's say life were to go on like this or get even worse. So when I defined that verse, Rohini, that verse was actually pretty good. Actually, I said I can live with it, not a problem at all. So suddenly my fear disappeared. Suddenly, so all these happened together. So suddenly the fear was gone, and I knew what I wanted to do. All that was needed was to just gain some confidence, and so that's how I came out of it.
Yeah. So you kind of became really clear on what you wanted rather than just worry about the things that you couldn't have anymore, the things that you didn't want. But you also confronted your greatest fear. And what was your greatest fear? What was it that really held you back?
See, Rohini, this is the funny thing in life. So what happens is, see, fear is fear. And what I, at least in my personal case, I'll tell you. So when fear grips over, what happens? Your mind just goes wild, right? This can happen, that can happen. And often you realize that, it's not logical or rational in any way. So you can't really pinpoint and say, oh, okay, this was the fear or whatever. But what was happening was that, like I said, because mind goes all over, and mind has no limits, and the more you sort of think about it, I think the stronger that fear gets. And the moment and this is what I've been doing ever since. I mean, this is like the last 9 years. Every time there is some fear, I mean, startup has its up and down, this can happen, that can, I just look at it in the eye and say, okay, tell me let me see what is the worst. And more often than not, at a rational level, because when you say what is the worst, you are actually, in a conscious way asking, okay, what is the worst, how bad can it go? And
Yeah.
most of the time, at least in my case so far, it has been reasonably acceptable.
Yeah, so did you kind of sit down and, maybe voice them, say, okay, these are the things I fear, and so kind of give them a voice or give them make them sort of tangible, so you could look at them and, well, metaphorically speaking, look at them and say, well, is this really that scary? Is that what you did? Because I think people who are listening to this, I want them to go away and think, yeah, I could do this for myself, and then I could,
Yeah.
confront them.
No, so I didn't really do, in the sense that, okay, if I have this fear, why is this fear there? What should I do about it? No, actually, I took it, like I said, even more head on. Went really to the core of it. And what is fear? I mean, if you really look at it, fear is that, that uncertainty in our mind, that whole thing that tomorrow something will happen, which is not good for me, something like that, which sort
Yeah.
of, I'm not earning anything, I won't have money, there's that. I mean, it can go all over the place. Now, the moment in a very rational, conscious way, without thinking about individual fears, I said, okay, let me just define. If this continues, what is that worst case scenario? I just did that. And because the moment I defined that, and I'm telling you, I mean, if you want, I can even, tell you what that worst case scenario was as
Yes,
I sort
please.
of defined it,
Yeah.
right? I'll tell you. So because, because then otherwise it's all theory, right?
Yes.
Difficult to grasp it. So so I sort of looked at my life, and I looked at, everything, and this was, I was doing it consciously in a very rational way. And I said, okay, what if I'm not earning, what if this, that, etc. And it so happened that couple of years back I had gone to a place near Ranikhet, which is Dwarahat. It's a very small town, and I had gone to stay actually in ashram. I'm a disciple of Yoganand Paraman, so I've actually gone to that ashram, and the life was just amazing. The town has just, it was beautiful town, is set in the Himalayas, you know uh, good scenery, nice air and everything. So I said, look, worst case scenario is what, I'll leave Delhi, Gurgaon, and go and settle there, and the expenses there will be much lesser. And I mean, the moment I defined that, and I consciously worked out, okay, how much money will I have, there's that, etc. I did all of those calculations, right? And I said, now, now how is it looking? And suddenly, I mean, it just looked wonderful. In fact, now it is the other way around. Now that worst case scenario, actually, sometimes I think maybe, at some point in life, that is what I should do. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to say. So suddenly, though, when you actually, and that was in my mind at that time, the worst case scenario.
Yes.
And it looks good even today to me. So, I mean, then there is no reason to be fearful about anything.
Yeah. Thank you. No, thank you for sharing that. And I see exactly what you mean by that. However, if I may just maybe add to that, that sometimes it's not as simple as what just we want, because obviously we have family, we have, a spouse or children, and we may have had plans of how we were going to provide for them. So how did you deal with that? How did your relationship with your family change now suddenly that your whole life plan as it was no longer going to be the same?
Yeah, again, I think the mindset change. So as I got more and more into spirituality, I'll tell you, it really helped me. So, for example, a lot of my friends ask me this question that, look, during this time, I'm sure you got into a depression, you started drinking, started drugs, and so on. The typical stereotype. Not none of that happened actually, because I didn't have any depression, like I said. I actually stopped drinking, by the way, in this phase. I stopped taking non-vegetarian. So actually, that was the funny part. And similarly, on the family front, also, I'll tell you how I dealt with it now, and even then and even now. So on the spiritual path, I sort of realized that, look, everybody is an independent soul. Yes, there is we come together as a family, and yes, there are things that one is responsible for. But somewhere there was this whole thing that, look, I am not somehow responsible for each and everything in others' life, right? Because people make their own decisions, right? So even if you take kids, I mean, you can provide certain facility up to a point. But like, if you see in your case, in my case, really it was either the effort, or going through competitive exams or something, right? Which so if I look back, my parents or my grandparents, I don't think they worried so much. I mean, I mean, my parents, I don't think even thought, whether I'll get into IIT or IIM or this and that. It was completely my doing. So what happened was that part of that fear going away was, I became much more relaxed, saying that, look, I can provide whatever, let's say, in money terms, or whatever is it that they need. But then ultimately, it will have to be their own doing. It will ultimately be the choices that they will make, and that
Yeah,
suddenly takes away the pressure. Earlier, I used to take responsibility for each and for everything in everybody's life, including my mother, sister, brother. So that, again, somebody actually taught me, saying that, look, if because that only you just take extra pressure and unnecessary pressure, because end of the day, everybody, and I think it's a good thing that everybody is on their own path, and do their own thing, and you
yeah.
can help them whenever they want you to be there.
I love that. And in terms of if I can sort of ask you, what obviously losing your sight is such a massive change to the way you live your life now. Um,
Right.
Sometimes they say that when you lose one sense, your other senses become, kind of step up almost to compensate for the loss. What's been your experience? Now that you can't see very well anymore, have
Yeah.
you noticed that your other senses have become extra sort of strong?
Yes. So I'll talk about at least three senses, which have become far, far stronger. So one is, so for years I had not read a book. And then about 15 years back, somebody introduced me to an audiobook. And now I'm completely into audio, even as we are talking, or when I'm hearing an audiobook. So somehow, I don't know, this is the funny thing. Whatever I hear in an audio form, it just goes straight and, gets registered. I
Hmm.
never miss it. So I've become a far better listener, and audiobooks are like, I mean, I just love hearing on that. So even if tomorrow I can confidently say, even if my vision were to become 100%, I'll still stick to audiobooks. I think because that faculty has really gone up.
Yeah.
Number two, somewhere, I don't know whether it's because I came onto spiritual path, because I was doing some meditation every day. I can feel people's energy. So
Hmm.
so sometimes I was recently recruiting also for the company, and I just wanted to meet people, not because I can see them, not because I can see their features, or make out what they're, but it's just that energies I can feel, and sometimes I just feel it even before somebody says anything. Right now, this is something I don't know how to describe it. And more, my system is becoming such that I want to engage with people with a certain kind of energy, which is more sort of similar.
Hmm.
And I would just so this is very difficult. And the third thing, which is again something funny, is that while I cannot see, but like, for example, if somebody is coming from the behind and I can't see, but I don't know, I mean, somewhere I just come to know, or
You sense it.
I just that those sensors have gone up,
Mhm.
maybe because we rely too much on our vision, and maybe it is all there, but sometimes we are only paying heed to our vision and not to other senses. So that's the other funny thing. So, but these are all, I mean, they sound crazy. Sound crazy to somebody else.
No, they don't sound crazy at all. I completely see what you mean, because also even in people's speech when they speak, you can tell. Like it's quite interesting. I was listening to a podcast recently, and the voice of the guest, it sounded like he was smiling the whole time he was speaking. And then luckily that podcast was also on YouTube as a video. And I went and had a look, and I was right. This guy was actually so you can actually tell. And I think
Interesting.
especially for people in call centers and doing sort of cold calling and selling, it's such a vital lesson
Right.
for them to learn that whatever they're feeling, their mood is translated into their voice. And obviously in your case you have noticed that because you can't see anymore. But for us, if we can't see that person because we're on the phone to them, we will also notice it. So that's great. So it's your hearing obviously has become much more acute, your listening ability, and you feel the energy. And I so agree with you. And people come in with certain energy, they may not even be aware of it. And the third one is your general sensory perception of what's going on around you. So do you find that you sense danger or opportunity more acutely now? So, for example, if you were walking somewhere and there was something in front of you that was maybe an obstacle or a dangerous thing, can you sense that, or is it more to do with people?
No, I agree. I can sense it sometime. And the only times, in fact, I have noticed that when I'm overconfident, or again, like I said, I was not listening to my inner voice earlier. So if I'm sort of, listening to my inner voice, if I'm just being that much, just being cautious, not overconfident, yes. I mean, there are a lot of times I know there is a step here, right? Even though I
Yeah,
can't see it, you
yeah.
know but so all those things happen, and whenever I'm overconfident, those are the times when I take a tumble, or recently broke a finger on the foot.
Yeah.
So all that happens when I'm overconfident, absolutely.
And the funny thing is, this probably happens in a space where you feel you have reason to be overconfident, like in your own personal space, or
Yes. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. So it happens at home, or where we used to have the office, where I'll
yes,
be so confident, and
uh,
suddenly I'll figure it's just, there's something there which I didn't notice last time.
yeah,
So
yeah.
all that happens, correct.
So I want us to have enough time to talk about Louis and the difference that something like that makes to someone's life. But before we go into that, I want to ask you. I mean, what happens with um, people who you've known for a long time and they know you? And this is I'm thinking back when you were first, realized you couldn't see anymore, and the change in you. That sometimes people don't know how to be with somebody who for whom the frame of reference has now changed. Like suddenly somebody has gone from being Pramit that they knew to Pramit who now is different. And what was your experience? How did people relate to you when they realized that you could no longer see?
Actually, I have actually, my relation today is better with people. I think it has maybe something to do with my vision, but a lot more to do with the fact that I got onto spirituality. As a person, also, I have changed dramatically. So I think I have become far more, listening to people, far more humble, far less selfish. Earlier, it was all about, what is in it for me. Earlier, my life was all around, running up the corporate ladder. So therefore, not really caring for anybody. So I think a lot of those things have changed. A lot of people notice it and tell me, especially friends from old engineering and management days. I mean, a lot of them can notice it and say, look, you're completely changed. And
Yeah.
so in a way, so my vision, yes, but people sort of, I don't think it really matters on the vision front.
And I think what the point that I suppose you're making is that, change begins with you. Because very often, sometimes people, like I would say, for example, we don't often know how to help somebody who is maybe blind, or, we can see that they're struggling, but we don't want to sort of go and assume that they want help. It's a sensitive thing. You want to help someone who may be looking to cross the road, but you're not sure whether they actually want your help, and you don't want to offend them by seeming to go and help. So what would your advice be for people who may not really know what the right thing to do is but want to be helpful?
Yeah. Okay, so okay, see, one of the things we all need to understand is that so whether I have a vision problem or some disability or something, it's all about how I'm processing it in my mind, right? So the problem, if you ask me, with everybody is in the mind, not so
Yes.
much in the physical faculty. Now, what I can tell you for sure is that everybody, irrespective of the kind of disability, each one of us want to be independent and somewhere be in control of our life, and at the same time seek help wherever it is really required, right? So I think where some people may not like it is when the help is being forced upon them.
Mm,
So I think what I tell guys is that, look, people say, let me hold your hand, and I say, no, no, don't do anything of the sort. If I need help, all you need to do is tell me where the steps are, or whatever, depending upon where I am. Otherwise, chill out, don't do anything. So I think I guess best is to just ask somebody, right?
yeah. So
That can
just
I help you in
yeah.
some way, or I mean, and just relax.
Yes.
Don't show over concern. Don't show as if none of that is needed. Actually, nobody needs sympathy.
Yeah,
So,
that's such a good point. And actually, it extends into normal everyday life as well. Like, when people reach out on LinkedIn and say, I can help you with this, this, and this, and I think, well, you're assuming I wanted your help. I don't actually want your help. So that's great advice. So essentially, just be as we would like to be treated. Just be courteous and just say, look, is there anything I can do to help?
right.
And if so, I'm here to help you or something like that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Louis. And at what point did Louis become a little sort of germ of an idea in your mind? And also, I forgot to ask you, did you ever learn Braille and things like that when you realized that you couldn't see?
No, see, so my journey has been actually a strange one. So typically, what happens? So either people lose their vision early, or they lose their vision much later, which is at about 50 years plus because of age and a whole lot of things,
Mhm.
diabetes and so on. Now, in either case, they are able to seek help and so on. Mine was a funny case where I didn't want to seek any help. So I'm a computer engineer, so I knew I can tinker around with technology, do something. So my journey of using assistive technology has been one of self discovery, one of experimentation, and in sometimes very strange ways. So like first time I used a screen reader in a way because the gestures become different. So first time I put it on, I thought the phone has got locked. So I had to take my daughter's help to go onto Google and figure out how to get out of the damn thing. I say, let me get out of it here.
Yeah.
But then after that, similarly, for example, there's another screen reader which I use on my PC, which I've been using ever since. Now the way I discovered it, because the name is called NVDA, and I thought the name sounds interesting because there was nothing actually about it. So I said, let me install it. The name is interesting. That's it. So I installed it and suddenly found, oh boy, this can do a lot of stuff that I was looking for. So this has been my journey into technology, trying out everything, figuring it out on my own, figuring out how to use it. In a way that helped me, because I'll tell you, fundamentally, when because I am like an outsider even today, and I'll tell you why, what I mean. So for example, if you look at it, a lot of visually impaired people have taken courses. So they have taken courses in terms of how to use a mobile phone, how to use a computer, what software to use, how to use them also. And they've also taken in terms of cane, how do you use the cane, how do you move around. So people have been teaching them. And what happens when you teach people, then everybody starts using things in a certain way, and which is what I observe around me. Now here is my case, who I mean, nobody taught me, I didn't ask anybody, I just did on my own. So I'm like a complete outsider. So when it came to thinking of an idea as to which app to build, I really had nobody. I had nothing in my mind. My mind was completely open. Nobody had drilled it in my mind that, look, if you have to use a screen reader, you have to use this one only, use it in this way only. So because I had an open mind and because I was like an outsider, I think that really helped, because then I could just, I could just question everything, and I could just say, okay, why do this way? Why not that way? And that's what really helped this journey.
Yeah, I love that. So you go in with this kind of beginner's mindset. And of course, in your case, you were going in to solve a problem that you yourself were experiencing. So
Absolutely.
it wasn't just someone looking at an opportunity and thinking, yeah, this could be quite good. So tell me what was the gap in, all the various screen readers, and obviously there's lots and lots of technology out there already for visually impaired people. What was the gap that you experienced that you thought, well, I could do something about this?
Well, to be honest, at the risk of sounding very foolish, I actually, I had no thoughts in terms of, what I would need to build. Now, I'll just tell you a couple of events which actually changed the whole thing. So one was meeting the managing director of Sequoia Capital. They're big in India. They're of course big in US. And he was the one who would put it in my mind saying that why don't you build apps for visually impaired? I had gone to him for some consulting work. So that thought was there in my mind. I can tell you, this thinking of even starting doing a startup, I mean, it can be really challenging. And I was actually doing a decent consulting work. I had some fairly stable work. And for me at that time it was a huge risk, because a startup has its own risk, and you really don't know what will happen tomorrow. So that thought was there. And then there was another meeting which happened with a friend where he offered to book Uber for me. And he took my smartphone, asked me where I wanted to go, put it into Uber, told me the options. I said, okay, select this one for me, similarly the ride, the fare. And he called up and even messaged the driver for me. So I think that was the time when I was, these two experiences had happened. And I was trying to at that time evaluate. And a lot of my meetings with the managing director of the VC firm that I told you were all around, this is not good, that is not good. And at some point he got fed up and he said, look, enough is enough. You tell me what is good and put it down on a half sheet of paper. And I can tell you again, that shakes you up, because it's easy to crib and criticize. It's
Yeah.
difficult to, I had no idea at that time.
So
And that's
sorry,
when this whole yeah.
quick question. So when you were saying this is not good, that's not good, were you talking about existing software that was available?
Yes,
I see. Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And I was
So
basically trying to say, oh, this is not great, that is not great. And that's what I'm saying. So it's
yeah,
easy
yeah,
to
yeah.
criticize existing solutions
I
or the
see.
existing system. But if you were to turn it around and say, okay, if I get the opportunity, what will I build? Something which is going to be good, and it's not easy to answer.
Love
So
that.
I think so this experience of with a friend that I told you, now that was really the turning point. Because so two things happened. One, I was even at here, there was some risk in my mind, and a lot of people were telling me, don't be stupid, don't get into a startup, just keep doing your consulting work, right? Because tomorrow your vision, and all of that, and all of that. But I when I processed it in my mind, one thing came very clear, that look, this is like a golden chance. If I miss it, I would regret it rest of my life. Because you really get this kind of opportunity to leverage your own disability and build something that can hopefully work for other friends who are themselves visually impaired. So I just didn't want to let this opportunity go. I said, no, I'm going to do it, come what may. And the moment I got armed with this idea, this whole experience of booking Uber, because that's when the thought struck that, look, why don't I build a virtual friend which is right there on the phone screen, which will just take my voice commands, which will do continuous voice interaction with me, and which will allow me to do each and everything within a supported app or on the phone settings. No, the idea was so simple. And I said, look, if that can happen, then there is nothing better than that. And why not just jump into it? So then I got into building Louis.
Yeah. So Louis is the name of the app, and tell me why you called it Louis. Is there a story behind that?
Yeah. So it was almost 1.5 years back. We that time we had not decided on the name. It was, in fact, we were calling it Neo initially, for lack of any better word. And we immediately found that users were coming across the world. So the moment we saw that, and it was still a very, 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 very prototype kind of a product at that time, and we said, look, if it's going to be a global product, then, and one of the ways we wanted to start it off is by saying, hey Louis. So we said, look, we therefore need a name which is short and sweet, easy to pronounce across the world. So whether you are in Russia or Africa or India or US, people should be able to connect in some way, and it should be easy to speak.
Yeah.
And then an agency actually suggested the name, and it is of course inspired from Louis Braille. And we said there cannot be any better inspiration than Louis Braille. And Braille is something which has seriously impacted, I think, lives of millions of people.
Yeah.
So if we can do even a small impact a few lives, I think it would be quite an achievement for Louis Voice Control.
I love that story. I had no idea that that's where the inspiration of the name came from. So Pramit, if you were to, in 60 seconds, explain what Louis does to make the life of someone who's visually impaired that much better, how would you describe it?
So there cannot be something as simpler as the kind of voice communication we are doing right now. It's the most natural form of communication. So you're basically controlling all your favorite apps, all the features in the phone with just your voice commands. And suddenly what happens, whether I cannot see, doesn't matter. I'm doing things as productively, as effectively as any sighted person.
And you are using which, are you able to use all the, most of the social media apps that sighted people would be using effortlessly?
Yeah, so it's along the way, in the sense Rome wasn't built on day one, Rohini. So we are also building it brick by brick. But
Sure.
yes, I mean, in coming very soon, basically all the popular apps, all the phone features, one can do it with voice commands.
Lovely. So I think people who want to know more, there's plenty of information on Louis out there. And I would suggest, people go and have a little look at it. Um, Before we sort of finish today, Pramit, I want to ask you, imagine many years from now, you've lived a fulfilled life and your Louis app becomes really, really successful and creates, impact as you wish. Um, how would you want to be remembered?
Oh, I don't want to be remembered in any way. I think the way I look at it, if Louis voice control is still in people's mind, is still in their hands on their mobile phones, and they are still using it effectively, I think my task is done. So honestly, I really honestly don't care about my being remembered in any way. I think if I can contribute more and more to impacting in some positive way people's lives, I think that's all I'm looking for, nothing more.
I love that. And I think you're such a great example that, you don't need sight to have a vision. So I wish you every success. I wish you every success with Louis. So just final question from me, Pramit. If you were to go back in time and, from where you are today and what you've learned and what you've seen, if you were to go back to your 30-year-old self who began to see, that something was changing, what advice would you give him?
Okay, somebody, if I was there 30 years back,
No, if you, as you are today, say you
right?
go back and you advise your younger
Ah,
self,
okay.
who was obviously just beginning to realize, oh my God, things are changing, I don't know what to do, what advice would you give him?
Actually, this is the funny thing. I've thought about it quite a bit, and especially, you sometimes think, oh, what if I were not to do this, do that, kind of a thing. Because then advice will mean that I'm trying to change somebody's natural path, right? And I would actually say I will not give any advice because, see, like my story, if you see, has been what? One of, figuring it out for myself, going through the ups and downs. And, sometimes when you look back, the downs are not really bad. So 2.5 3 years not earning anything, not knowing, loss of confidence. If I now look back, I think that experience taught me a lot. I mean, there's a lot I learned, including the fact that I somewhere knew back of my mind of what kind of a solution for visually impaired I want to build. So I would say that those ups and downs are honestly not bad. uh, Let things work out the way they are meant to, and sometimes they are all for a good at that time. So for example, I can go back and say, oh, what if I had not taken this for a year, or maybe taken it for a year lesser, maybe my vision would have been different. But I think one got to just move on. And the way today I look at life, I mean, I'm an honest believer that two things. One is that anything that happens in life happens for the good. I may not like it, that's a different thing. But then when you look back, and so many times you realize that, look, probably that was the best thing to have happened to me. So I would say that. And number two, I can tell you this whole experience of Louis and all these chance events that I was talking about. I think I am getting a lot of help from, I call it higher forces, call it divine, call it whatever. But there is a lot of help I actually get. So I am not really doing anything. I'm just sort of, flowing in and just trying to each and every day do things to the best of my ability, and not worry about the results.
I love it. You're going with
So
the
that's how
flow.
my life is going.
Yeah, I love that. So, final question. What is your definition of a fulfilled life?
Okay, so see, I would say fulfilled, because see, we have to be contented from inside, right? Otherwise, and I don't think in my case, therefore, it is not about money, it's not about stature, it's nothing of the sort. I would just say being contented, being peaceful, being happy, and having, and just living with that thing that, look, I did my best now, and not really measuring it in a very materialistic sense by saying that, okay, what was my target, how much did I achieve, none of that. So I would say contentment, peace, happiness, and putting in your best. That's it for me.
Love it. Pramit, thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are, and I wish you and your team every success with Louis. And I look forward to catching up with you in due course.